How's it going, everyone? All the vodka stuff that I've been doing recently has been awesome. It's been so much fun. But I'm guessing a few of you out there know already that what I'm excited to make and what I really want to make is single malt. And guess what? The order, all the grains and stuff have just arrived for my first single malt wash. I'm really pumped. I'm stoked. I can't wait to get into it. So let's get stuck in. Welcome to Stiller, everyone. This is the channel all about chasing the craft of home distillation and making it a legitimate hobby. So if that's something you're into, if you dig distilling, if you just really like craft spirits perhaps, have a look around. This might be the channel for you. If it is, hit that subscribe button down below and I'll see you next time too. Like I alluded to before, making a single malt or a scotch impersonation, because we can't call it scotch, right? I'm in New Zealand, is kind of the reason that I really started to think about getting into this hobby. That's what I wanted to be able to do. Like I said, the vodka was awesome, but this is what I'm really excited about, so I can't wait to get stuck in. This is a big old sack of grain, and I'm gonna run you through what I got, but first I want to tell you who I got it from, because these guys are pretty cool. I've used them in the past for home brewing, and they've always been awesome. They are always right there to help you out and sort it out for you. So big shout out to the guys at allgrain.com or Brewtopia. I'll put a link down below to their Facebook page. If you're in New Zealand and you're looking at buying stuff for home distilling or home brewing, I can totally recommend them. They do a sweet job and their prices are pretty decent too. So here's what I ordered from them. I ordered 10 kilos of the Gladfield base, 3 kilos of manuka smoked malt. Because I couldn't find peat easily, I just wanted to order something, I wanted to get it done now. Turns out that when these guys went to fill my order, they actually didn't have quite as much manuka as they thought they did, so they gave me 1 kilo of manuka smoked, which is all they had left, and they gave me another 2 kilos of the cherry smoked, which, to be honest, I've heard is actually a pretty decent substitute for peat smoke when you're making a single malt. So I'm happy, that's awesome. I also ordered, because I can't help myself and I just have to mess with stuff, a Belgian yeast to ferment with. Now that's what I ordered, but when I opened the package up, I found another packet of the Belgian yeast, which is awesome because there's no way this is enough for 100 liters. And they also hooked me up with some yeast nutrient, which, seeing as I got it, I may as well throw it in there, right? So yeah, thanks a bunch, guys. I really appreciate it. Getting stuff delivered on time with sweet customer service like that is definitely appreciated. So that's pretty much my recipe, team. 10 kilos of base malt, 3 kilos of smoked malt, fermented with a Belgian yeast, and then I'm gonna finish it off with a baker's yeast if it looks like that gravity's not getting low enough. And this is gonna be for a roundabout 100 liters. I say a roundabout because I've never mashed anything this big, and to be honest, I don't really care about the exact volume that I get, so I'm gonna let the amount of sugar that I get out of the grains dictate the final volume. That Muppet screwed up already, but to make it interesting, I'm not gonna tell you what happened yet. Hit pause, jump in the comments down below, let me know what you think I've screwed up, and for bonus points, tell me what that's gonna affect and how I could fix it or roll with it. As far as process goes, this might be a little bit interesting. And I say that because I pirated a bunch of parts from my homebrewing gear to use for the still. So I can't use my homebrew kit. I thought about going out and trying to rustle up some stuff to limp through and get it running again. But in the end, I decided, you know what would be kind of cool? To do this super budget with hardly any gear, so other people that are new to this have got a chance at doing the same thing. But the basic plan is to do a couple of small mashes in my fermenter with a BIAB bag to strain the grains. I'm going to sparge that grain as well by basically teabagging it. I'm going to dunk it. Once I have the runnings from all of those mashes transferred into the large fermenter, I'll take a reading, see what my gravity is, and top it up to an appropriate level that I see fit. So is this the ideal process? Hell no. Is it a process that's going to work? Yeah, I think so. I know I said that I'm going pretty minimal with the gear I'm using, so I figured I would just do a quick review. First, something to mash in. I'm using a 30-liter fermenter simply because that's what I have. Second is a grain bag. Basically, I'm going to use this to mash in and then strain the grains afterwards. It's also handy for the dunking sparge. You're going to need a fermenter. I've got a big 200 litre one over there, but it's up to you depending on the volume you want to ferment. You're also going to need a way to heat your strike water, which is the water you use to mash into the grains. Today I'm using my still boiler, and that's simply because it's there, it's set up, and it's ready to go. Honestly, you can do this with pots on the stove though, it's no big deal. Then come the things that I guess are somewhat optional, but really you're probably going to want them. The first is a thermometer. You can use pretty much any type of thermometer. Personally, I find the chef thermometers with the long cord and the probe on the end the best, because you can put the machine in one place and have the tip somewhere else. But honestly, use whatever works for you. And the last thing is a way to be able to measure the amount of sugar you're extracting from the grains. Two options here, guys. The first is a hydrometer and the second is a refractometer. Personally, I much prefer the refractometer for this process, but hydrometers are arguably more versatile in more situations, so it's up to you which you get if you decide you want to. I'll throw a few affiliate links down below for you guys so you can have a look at these things and figure out how much they're worth if you're looking at getting into this. Anyway, my strike water is up to temperature, so let's go get stuck in. Alright, so I've got a little over 20 litres of water in here. I'm planning on adding about 5 kilos of grain to this, which means I'll have to do 3 of these, which means I want a strike temperature of right around 67 degrees so I can hit 62 degrees when I put the grains in here. Obviously, I'm a little bit high, so I'm just going to add some cold water to help knock this down a wee bit, and then we should be ready to put some grain in. Alright, so there we go, 67 degrees, time to put some grains in. So one of the secrets to mashing in is to try and avoid dough balls. Dough balls, see if I can find one. But dough balls are basically where the grain sticks together, and believe it or not, the inside of that ball will actually remain completely dry. Meaning that the enzymes can't get to it, the hot water can't get to it to convert those starches to sugars, which is obviously what you don't want. The way that you can avoid dough balls is to mash in relatively slowly, don't dump all the grain in at once, and stir well. There we go, so that is a dough ball. And when you look inside, there's dry bits. So we don't want that. We want to keep those all broken up so the enzymes and the water has access to all of the starch. So I think I need just a little bit more grain in there. Alright, so that's all mixed in, and what I need to do now is get that lid on nice and quick and insulate this so the temperature doesn't drop. I've insulated the bejesus out of it, and the reason for that is that I want it to hold that temperature for as long as possible, right around that 62 degrees. I don't want this to turn into a technical video about mashing grains, but just a really quick rundown on what happened and what is happening in that mash tun, for those of you that are new to this stuff. The grain contains starch, which we want to turn into sugars, but it also contains the enzymes that will convert those starch to sugars for us. If we were going to grow these seeds, that's what they would do. They would take the starch, convert it into sugars to use as energy to grow into the wonderful plant that produces this stuff. What we've done is we've hijacked the process and we've dissolved the starch and the enzymes in water, allowing the enzymes to work on the starch. There's 2 enzymes that we are specifically interested in as brewers and distillers, alpha and beta amylase. Like I said, I don't want to get into the geeky stuff right now, but the idea is that you can control which of those enzymes are more likely to do more work by changing the temperature of the mash. 62 degrees is definitely on the low side, especially for brewing, and I'm doing that because I want as many fermentable sugars as possible in the final wash, so the yeast can go to work on as much of that, what used to be starch, as possible, giving us a higher yield at the other end. The plan now is to let this sit for about half an hour, at which point in time I will pop it open, give it another good stir, just to make sure that everything is in solution and we're getting the highest yield we possibly can out of it. I should note that generally around about an hour mash time is normal, but with the new contemporary highly modified malts, Honestly, most of the conversion in here is going to happen in the first 15 minutes or so. That's why it's pretty important to dial in a mash temperature at the beginning of the mash, so most of that conversion happens in the way that you want it to happen. I am going to let it go for a full hour though, just to make sure that I can get everything I can out of this thing. Alright guys, that has been 30 minutes, so I'm going to whip the insulation off, give it a good stir, and get this all closed up again as fast as I possibly can. You probably noticed that I put the thermometer back in there as I was stirring it. I was just curious to see how much temperature I'd lost. When I closed it back up, it was sitting right around 60 degrees. So that's not too bad. Closer to 61 would have been great. 62 would have been perfect, but whatever. I can roll with that. That's cool. Alright guys, that has been an hour all up. So I just need to pop this off. Gonna give it one more stir just for the hell of it, basically. Interesting. So I can just barely pick up that smoke, just barely, and it's coming across as almost like a savory, sort of meaty, full-bodied flavor, which could be really interesting actually. So I have this other container here basically so I can whack the grain bag into it. So basically just using it like a giant tea bag. As you can see, I've emptied this bucket out straight into the fermenter, and I'm just going to use it now to get a little more sugar out of this grain before I ditch it. I found the easiest way to do that is to twist the bag and then squeeze it. Alright, so that's a little bit more sugar, delicious sugar for our yeast. And now I want to sparge this as well to get even more out of it. So I'm not too sure if you can see that from there, but I've now got about 10 litres of water in here, and this is a fair bit hotter. This is at 75 degrees. And basically I'm just going to dunk this in here. So I've opened the bag up and I'm just going to give that a good stir. The second runnings are sitting at about 10-15, so it's still a lot of sugar in that. I am totally happy I'll keep that. I don't think it's worth doing it again, but that's another 8-9 litres at 10-15. Well, worth it. They can go in too. Basically now it's time to just do this another 2 times. I know doing it this way is not time economical, it's not that efficient. But like I said, I just wanted to do it with the super basic stuff without doing anything crazy, and it's something that literally anyone that wants to distill can do. It's really not that hard. I wanted to do it on that level first, and later on I can give you guys some more tips to make this process a little bit more exact, a little bit more refined, and obviously take a whole lot less time. In any case, I'm going to do this 2 more times. I'm not going to put you through that. I'll catch you up and give you a summary of what I got for all of my wash at the end. The second mash is underway right now, and I figured while I was doing that I would rehydrate the yeast. And like I said, I am using a Belgian yeast. I'm hoping that it'll throw some of those kind of complex estery, phenolic, sort of funky things into the wort and give the final product a little bit more complexity without so much age. That's the theory. But because I've only got 2 packets of these things and I am pitching it into a whole lot of wort, I'm going to treat it really well. I'm going to hydrate it now, and I've also got, I also kept a sample of the first runnings from the first mash, which I'm going to tip in as well. So it'll have, I don't know, maybe 3-4 hours with that just to get started before I pitch it into the main fermenter. So the yeast is all hydrated now. It's a nice sort of homogeneous, creamy looking yeast, which it looks stunning, to be honest. I've got some of those first runnings, so I'm going to put those in there too. Anyway, so I'm going to just cover this up and let it go for it until that's ready to pitch. I'm hoping that'll help the yeast divide a little bit now and get a little bit of a head start while the fermenter cools down. In the end, I only needed to do 2 mashes, which is cool. It cut down on time. And the mash themselves went really well. I was pretty happy with the way that worked, actually, that little system. But the thing I screwed up was the quantities. I initially built the recipe for sort of 50 to 60 litres, and then somewhere along the line, my brain decided that it was 100 litres. So I didn't have anywhere near enough grain for that amount of wort. I got a little bit blasé and got way too caught up in thinking about the recording and the YouTube stuff while I was trying to do the process. I don't know what happened, but here's how I fixed it. I had some DME, or dried malt extract, lying around, and I also had some LME, liquid malt extract, lying around. I know it's a really expensive way to fix a wash like this, but I had it, screw it, whatever. I threw it in. They got the starting gravity up to a point where I was almost happy with it, and I also put in 2.5 kilos of white cane sugar. I know that's sacrilege, but what the hell, it's such a small part of the grist that I'm hoping it's not going to have a huge effect. Anyway, with all of that taken into consideration, I got a starting gravity of 1061. I'm hoping this is going to ferment out super dry down to about 1, especially with that table sugar. So I'm hoping everyone's kind of figured out that this video wasn't necessarily about giving you a specific recipe or a specific process to do this kind of thing with. It was more about showing everyone that all grain is not scary. You don't need crazy equipment for it. You can just jump in and give it a crack. So I know that this process was flawed. I know this process was shit. So if you guys are excited to try all grain and you haven't done it before, get stuck in, man. It's awesome. It's a lot of fun. Maybe try a smaller wash rather than a bigger wash to start with, but you won't regret it. I promise you. It's a really rewarding process and it kind of feels like magic. I gotta say, it still feels like that to me. I love it. Thanks a bunch for hanging out. It's always a pleasure to chill with you guys. Thanks for watching the video. If you liked it, hit the like button. If you really liked it and you're not subscribed yet, have a think about subscribing, and I'll catch you guys next time. See ya.